She told me not to step inside my own kitchen. That's when I realized I wasn't welcome in my own home anymore. The smell of fried onions used to be my morning comfort, that familiar, warm scent that filled the house before sunrise. But that morning, it was gone. Instead, the house smelled like lemon disinfectant and store-bought candles, my daughter-in-law's favorites. I stood by the doorway of the kitchen, still in my faded pink shawl, the one my late husband used to say made me look like spring. But in that moment, I felt like winter, cold, unseen, unwanted. She was standing by the counter, scrolling on her phone, wearing one of those expensive aprons with Queen of the Kitchen written on it. I wanted to smile at the irony, but something inside me stopped. I watched her drop onions into the oil. The hiss filled the silence between us. "Good morning, Aisha," I said softly. She didn't look up, just stirred the onions and said, "Good morning, Amy. Breakfast will be ready soon. You don't have to do anything." That phrase, "you don't have to do anything," used to sound like kindness. Now it sounded like a wall. I smiled weakly, gripping the edge of the counter. I was thinking I'd make parathas today. Zayn always liked mine. She finally looked up. "Oh, actually, Amy, I already planned the menu. We're doing avocado toast. Zayn's trying to eat healthy now." She said it gently, but her eyes held that polite firmness that tells you, don't interfere. Zayn walked in right then. My only son, freshly showered, smelling of his expensive cologne. His hair was slicked back, his shirt perfectly ironed. He kissed Aisha on the cheek before even looking at me. When he finally did, he smiled that boyish smile that still melts my heart. "Morning, Amy," he said, hugging me quickly. "Smells good in here, doesn't it?" "Yes, I managed, though it's not my cooking anymore." He chuckled. "Aisha's got it covered, Amy. You just relax now, okay? You've done enough all these years." Relax, that word again. As if a mother's hands ever stop wanting to serve her child. I nodded, pretending to agree, but as I walked away, I noticed something small, a note taped to the fridge. It read, "No shoes, no clutter, no extra spices," written in her tidy handwriting, and just below it, a smiling emoji. I stood there staring, my chest tightening. I kept this kitchen spotless for 28 years, before she even knew how to boil water. And now, there were rules for me, but I said nothing, because that's what peace looks like sometimes. Silence. Normal life before the storm. Before Aisha married Zayn, our house used to hum with life. I'd wake up early, light the stove, and make breakfast before my son even opened his eyes. He'd stumble in, half asleep, asking, "Emmy, chai ready?" And I'd smile, already pouring it. After his father died, it was just the two of us. We had our routines. Friday night biryani, Sunday grocery runs, and evening walks on the roof where he'd tell me about his dreams. I used to tease him, "Just don't bring home a wife who can't cook." He'd laugh, "Amy, whoever I marry will love your cooking too much to compete." I believed him. When he introduced Aisha, elegant, educated, working at a marketing firm, I tried to like her. She had a polite smile, called me auntie at first, and brought imported chocolates on her second visit. But there was something distant in her eyes, like she was always halfway somewhere else. The wedding was grand, far grander than I'd imagined. Her parents handled most of it, modern decorations, buffet instead of Daig, a live singer. I smiled through it all, even when my relatives whispered, "Times have changed, Cheyenne. This is not our style." After they moved in, I thought we'd become close, two women running one home, sharing chores, recipes, laughter. But slowly, things shifted. It started small. My teacups, the old floral ones I'd used since my wedding, were packed away for space. The blue tablecloth I stitched by hand was replaced with something minimal. Even my old spice jars, the ones labeled in Urdu, disappeared, replaced by sleek glass ones with printed English tags. She called it modernizing the kitchen. I called it erasing me. Zayn didn't notice. He'd come home late, tired, and all he saw was a peaceful, tidy house. He'd kiss his wife, eat dinner, thank her for cooking, and then turn to me saying, "Amy, you must be happy she's taking care of everything now." Happy. I was trying to be. But that day, the day she told me not to touch the stove, something inside me shifted. She said it so casually, like she was talking about weather. "Amy, please don't cook when I'm not home, okay? It just makes the kitchen messy, and the oil smell sticks everywhere." I stood frozen, spatula in my hand, as if she'd snatched not just a utensil, but a piece of my identity. I wanted to protest, to remind her that every wall in this house smelled of my cooking. Every meal here had come from these hands. But Zayn walked in, saw our faces, and quickly said, "Aisha's just trying to keep things clean, Amy. Don't take it the wrong way." I didn't reply. I just turned off the stove, wiped my hands on my apron, and walked away quietly. But something kept echoing in my mind. She forgot whose name's on the deed. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the refrigerator humming felt louder than usual. The clock ticked like it was mocking me, and the faint scent of detergent, that lemony one she used, made my chest ache. I wasn't angry yet, just hollow, like someone had quietly taken my place and left me standing in my own shadow. I didn't know then that it was only the beginning, that what she took from me wasn't just a kitchen. It was control over my own home. It started with the curtains. They were pale beige, simple, plain, without the embroidered borders I had stitched myself years ago. I noticed them one morning while making my bed. My floral curtains, the ones with pink roses that matched my bed sheet, were gone. At first, I thought maybe they were being washed. But when I asked Aisha, she said casually, "Oh, those old ones. I replaced them. They didn't match the new theme." The new theme. I wanted to ask whose theme it was, mine or hers, but I didn't. I just nodded and smiled, my throat tight, my words hiding behind my teeth. Over the next few weeks, more small changes crept in, quiet but sharp. The wooden frame of my husband's photo disappeared from the living room shelf. The lace doilies I crocheted were tucked into a drawer. Even the Asian clock, the one that reminded us of prayer times, was replaced by a sleek digital one that only showed the temperature and time. Aisha said, "It's minimalist, Amy. Clean lines make the house feel calm." But for me, it felt like standing in a stranger's home. The silence between us. There was a silence between me and my daughter-in-law that no one else seemed to notice. She spoke to me politely, always with respect. "Amy, please sit. Amy, have your medicine. Amy, I'll handle it." But that word Amy, it had no warmth. It was duty, not affection. Zane remained caught between us, unaware. He still kissed my forehead every night, still asked if I needed anything. But I saw how his eyes shifted to Aisha for approval, as if even his kindness toward me had to pass through her permission. One afternoon, while cleaning my cupboard, I found something unexpected. It was a property document folder, the one I kept in the bottom drawer, wrapped in a plastic bag. I hadn't opened it in years. When I looked inside, my hands trembled. The deed of the house, my husband's old handwriting, my name clearly printed on the title, Mrs. Shaina Ralph. It wasn't new information, of course, but that day, it felt like a reminder from fate. This is still your home. I placed the file back gently, my fingers brushing over the paper as though it were something sacred. That same evening, I overheard Aisha on a phone call while I was passing the living room. Her voice was low but sharp, the kind people use when they want to sound calm while they're angry. "Yes, Ma," I told him, "but you know Zane. He gets soft when it comes to his mother. We'll manage it slowly. The house will be under his name soon anyway." My breath caught. I stopped, half hidden behind the wall. Her mother's muffled voice echoed faintly through the phone, something about responsibility and future. Then Aisha said, "Trust me, Ma. Once the renovation starts, she won't be handling anything. It's better that way." Renovation, under his name. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. My heart pounded in my ears as I stepped back quietly toward my room, each step heavier than the last. That night, when I looked at the kitchen light glowing faintly down the hallway, I realized something. She wasn't just changing curtains and furniture. She was changing ownership. The smell of burnt parathas. A few days later, on a Friday morning, I woke up early, earlier than everyone else. The sky was still gray. The birds hadn't begun their songs. I missed the old mornings, the sound of sizzling ghee, the smell of masala, the comfort of my own routine. So I thought, just this once, I'd make breakfast before she woke up. I tied my dupatta tight, turned on the stove, and rolled out the dough with steady hands. The smell of the first paratha, golden, crisp, filled the kitchen. And for a brief, precious moment, it felt like home again. Then I heard footsteps. "Amy!" Her voice was sharp, startled. I turned and saw Aisha standing in the doorway, arms folded, her hair still messy from sleep. "Oh, you're up early," I said with a smile. "I just thought I'd make Zane's favorite." "Amy, we talked about this." She moved closer, her tone firm. "I told you not to cook when I'm not here. You know how messy it gets, and the oil smell." "It's my kitchen too," I said quietly. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Simple words, but they made her freeze. She blinked, her lips pressed tight, then said coldly, "Of course it is, but things work better when there's order. You can rest. You've done enough." She walked past me and turned off the stove, taking the spatula from my hand like she was taking a toy from a child. For the first time, I didn't move aside. I stood there and watched her dump the half-cooked paratha into the bin. The hiss of the oil quieted, but my heart didn't. I felt humiliated, as if years of service, love, and care had been reduced to too much oil. Zane's apology. That evening, Zane came to my room. He looked tired, guilt written all over his face. "Amy," he said, sitting beside me. "Aisha told me what happened. You know she didn't mean to upset you." I looked at him, at my boy who once held my hand crossing the street, who once promised he'd always take care of me. "Zane," I said softly, "do you think I'm a guest here?" He frowned. "Of course not, Amy. Why would you say that?" "Because your wife speaks to me like one," I replied. "Like I don't belong." He sighed. "Aisha just likes things a certain way. She's not used to." "To what?" I interrupted, my voice trembling. "Respect or sharing?" He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "Please, Amy," he said. "I don't want fights in the house. Can you both just try to adjust?" I wanted to scream that I had been adjusting since the day she walked in, but instead I said nothing. When he left, I sat in silence, listening to the sound of the clock ticking, the same clock that had ticked through every phase of my life. Marriage, motherhood, widowhood, and now displacement. That night, I opened my cupboard again. My hands went straight to the property file. I pulled it out, placed it on my lap, and stared at the words that defined everything I had built. Owner, Mrs. Shaina Ralph. For the first time in months, I felt a small ember of strength flicker inside me. She could replace curtains, dishes, and even the smell of my kitchen, but she couldn't erase me. Not yet. The next few weeks were a quiet storm. Aisha stayed polite, careful, composed, but her politeness was sharp as glass. Every "Emmy, I'll handle it" meant stay out of the way. Every "Don't worry, I've got this" meant you're not needed. Zane remained oblivious, lost between work emails and late-night calls. He didn't see the small things, the way Aisha sighed when I entered the kitchen, or how she rearranged everything I touched the moment I left the room. Still, I tried. I smiled. I stayed silent, because silence was the only thing keeping peace alive. Until one morning, I found an envelope that broke it. The hidden papers. It was a Tuesday. I was dusting the living room when I noticed a file on the coffee table, sleek, sleek navy blue with property valuation printed on the cover. Curiosity wasn't my intention, but the word property pulled me like a magnet. I opened it slowly. Inside were printed documents, stamped, official looking. I recognized the name of our area, Gulshan Block 10. It was my address, but what made my hands tremble wasn't the address, it was the line below it. Proposed transfer, Mr. Zane Ralph. Transfer. The word hit me like a slap. My eyes darted to the next page, an application letter typed neatly. As the current residence is under my mother's name, we seek to transfer ownership to her son for financial planning and future renovation purposes. At the bottom was a digital signature, Mrs. Aisha Zane Ralph. Not mine, hers. I sat down right there on the sofa, the file trembling in my lap. The room felt smaller, air heavier. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. So this was her plan. The renovations, the talk of modernizing, the soft takeover of every corner of this home. It all led here. To erasing my name from my own house. The breaking point. When Zane came home that evening, I couldn't hold it anymore. He entered, loosening his tie, smiling. Amy, Aisha's cooking your favorite doll tonight. I stood near the window, the file in my hand. Zane, I said calmly, sit down. We need to talk. He looked surprised but obeyed, sitting on the edge of the sofa. Aisha emerged from the kitchen just then, wiping her hands on her apron. Oh, perfect timing. Dinner's almost. Not now, I interrupted quietly. She froze. Zane frowned. Emmy, what's wrong? Without a word, I placed the file on the table and opened it to the transfer document. He stared, confused. Then realization dawned on his face. What is this? He murmured. That's what I'd like to know, I said. My voice didn't shake this time. Why is my house being transferred under your name? And why didn't anyone tell me? Aisha's face went pale. Amy, it's not what you think. Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like. I cut in. I think you planned this. Slowly, quietly. You made me feel like a guest until I had stopped questioning anything. Zane looked between us, speechless. Aisha, he asked softly. She straightened her posture, crossing her arms. Zane, please. I was just trying to organize things. It's safer if the house is under your name. What if something happens? Legal matters are complicated. Complicated, I said, stepping forward. You think I don't understand legal matters? This house was bought with my husband's pension. Every tile here carries a sweat. And his will, Aisha, clearly states it belongs to me until my last breath. Zane rubbed his temples, his voice tense. Aisha, you should have talked to me first. I did talk to you, she snapped. Her tone, for the first time, was sharp. No politeness left to hide behind. I told you this was necessary. You just didn't listen properly. You're always too busy defending your mother. The words hung in the air. My mother, as if I were a burden. I looked at Zane, searching for something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or understanding. But he just looked tired. Amy, he finally said. Aisha didn't mean to hurt you. Maybe she went about it the wrong way, but her intentions. Stop, I said quietly. Don't defend what's wrong. He fell silent. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the ceiling fan whirring above, spinning faster than my thoughts. Finally, I closed the file, held it to my chest, and said, I won't let you take what isn't yours. Then I turned and walked to my room. The night of rain. That night, rain poured down, heavy and relentless. I sat by my window, the file still beside me, and watched the water trace lines down the glass. Memories came flooding back. My husband, Ralph, standing in this very courtyard the day we bought the plot. He'd smiled, saying, someday, when we're gone, this house will still hold our story. And now, someone wanted to rewrite that story, erase his name, my name, everything we built. I felt anger then, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that burns quietly with purpose, the kind that makes you remember who you are. The confrontation. The next morning, I woke early, made tea for myself, the old way, with elaichi and extra sugar, and waited for them to wake up. When Aisha entered the kitchen, she looked startled to see me sitting there. Amy, sit down, I said calmly. She hesitated, then obeyed. I know you think I'm old, I said. I know you think I don't understand the world anymore. But what you forget is that this house was built by someone who worked his whole life so his wife would never depend on anyone, not even her own son. She looked down, silent. I welcomed you here, I continued. I let you make changes, choose colors, replace my things. I thought maybe that's what love looks like now, adjusting. But love without respect is nothing, Aisha. And you, my dear, have forgotten respect. Her eyes glistened, with guilt or anger, I couldn't tell. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she said finally. I just wanted to feel like it was our home. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I saw not a villain, but a young woman desperate to belong somewhere she didn't build. She had grown up in luxury, raised to control, not to coexist. Maybe this wasn't pure malice. Maybe it was fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being overshadowed by the memory of the woman who came before her, the first woman of this house. Still, I said softly, you could have found a place for yourself here without pushing me out. She didn't respond. Her silence was her confession. Later that evening, I went to my cupboard once more, not to cry this time, but to prepare. I pulled out the original property deed and the copy of my husband's will. Then, I called an old friend, Advocate Nazreen, the same woman who had helped us draft the deed decades ago. Nazreen, I said quietly into the phone, I think someone's trying to take what's mine. I need to make sure they don't. Her voice was firm. Bring the papers tomorrow morning, and don't sign anything until I see it. I hung up, my hand steady for the first time in weeks. The storm had had passed, and now it was my turn to stand tall. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The house was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds outside hadn't begun their song. I folded my shawl neatly around my shoulders, slipped the file into my handbag, and stepped out without a sound. The air smelled faintly of rain and earth. For the first time in months, I felt something like freedom. Walking down the street, my dupatta fluttering behind me, each step away from that house giving me a little more courage. The lawyer's office. Nazreen's office was small, tucked between an old bookstore and a tailor shop. She hadn't changed much. Same neat bun, same sharp eyes that could slice through lies in a heartbeat. When she saw me, she smiled warmly. Shaina, it's been years. What brings you here, my friend? I sat down, placed the file in front of her, and said, my daughter-in-law tried to transfer my house to my son's name without telling me. Her smile faded. She opened the file, scanning the papers quickly, her eyes narrowing. This isn't a transfer, she said. It's an attempted manipulation. The documents aren't complete. They'd still need your signature. Thank God, I whispered. So it's not legal? Not yet, she said. But she's clever. She started the process. If you stay silent, she might find another way. A fake power of attorney, maybe. We'll make sure she doesn't. She flipped to a blank sheet and began writing. I'll draft a legal notice, she said. We'll send it to the housing authority. It'll state clearly that you're the sole owner and that no transfer, sale, or renovation can take place without your written consent. I nodded slowly, relief washing through me. But part of me still ached. She's family, Nazreen, I said softly. I never wanted this to get ugly. Nazreen looked up, her tone gentler. Sometimes protecting what's yours isn't ugliness, Shaina. It's self-respect. Those words stayed with me. When I left her office, the morning sun had broken through the clouds. The city felt alive again. Horns, voices, footsteps. But for me, it was something deeper. A heartbeat returning to its rhythm. The calm before the confrontation. When I returned home, Aisha and Zain were having breakfast. Zain looked up surprised. Ammi, where'd you go so early? I had some errands, I said simply, placing my bag on the chair. Aisha glanced at me, cautious. She was wearing a crisp white shirt, her hair tied perfectly. She looked composed, but her eyes flickered with something uneasy. She knew I'd found the file. She knew I'd seen everything. And now, she didn't know what I'd do next. Ammi, she said, trying to sound casual. I was thinking, maybe we could start the renovation next month. Just the kitchen first. I smiled, a calm, practiced smile. The kitchen, I asked. What kind of renovation? Oh, just small updates, she said quickly. New counters, better lighting. It'll make things easier for me. I stirred my tea slowly. Don't worry about that, Aisha. There won't be any changes. Not until I say so. Her spoon froze midair. Zain looked between us, sensing the tension. Ammi, I'm not stopping progress, I said, cutting him off softly. I'm just reminding everyone that progress needs permission. I stood up, carried my cup to the sink, and left the room. Quietly, firmly, the way a storm leaves without thunder but leaves your change. The letter arrives. 2 days later, a courier arrived while Aisha was home alone. When I returned from the market, she was standing in the living room holding the envelope, pale, visibly shaken. Ammi, she said, her voice trembling slightly. What is this? I took the envelope from her hand, tore it open, and read it aloud. This notice serves as an official declaration that the residential property located at 45B, Gulshan Block 10, Karachi, is solely owned by Mrs. Shaina Rauf. Any attempt to transfer, alter, or renovate said property without her written consent will be considered illegal. It was signed and sealed. The stamp of the law glowed red under the afternoon light. Aisha's lips parted, but no words came out. Zain walked in just then, briefcase in hand, confusion on his face. What's going on? I handed him the letter. He read it quickly, his eyes widening. Ammi, you filed a legal notice? I met his gaze, calm, unwavering. Yes, to protect what your father built. To remind you both that this home isn't just a building. It's a promise. Ammi, you didn't have to. I did, I said firmly, because love without boundaries turns into disrespect. Aisha looked like she wanted to argue, but something in my voice silenced her. She sat down quietly, her eyes moist. For the first time since she'd entered my house, she didn't have control. And strangely, I didn't feel victorious, just sad, because families shouldn't need paperwork to remember love. Zain's guilt. That night, Zain came to my room again. He stood by the door, hesitant. Ammi, he said softly, I didn't know she was doing all this. I swear. I nodded. I believe you, but believing you doesn't erase the hurt. He sat down, looking small in the dim light. I just wanted peace. You and Aisha are the two people I love most. I thought if I stayed quiet, things would balance out. I looked at him, my grown son, trying to hold everyone together while losing himself in the process. Zain, I said gently, peace built on silence isn't peace. It's fear. He lowered his eyes. After a moment, he said quietly, I'll fix this, Ammi. I promise. You don't need to fix it, I said. You just need to remember who taught you what a home means. He reached for my hand, squeezing it. I'm sorry, he whispered. And for the first time in weeks, I saw my son again. Not the man lost between two worlds, but the boy who used to run into my arms after school. The turning point. The next morning, Aisha knocked softly on my door. She stood there without makeup, eyes red, holding a tray with tea and biscuits. Ammi, she said quietly, may I come in? I nodded. She sat beside me, her hands trembling slightly. I never meant to take the house from you, she said. I just wanted to make a place that felt like mine too. I thought if everything everything looked different. Maybe I'd finally belong. Her words hung heavy between us. I sighed, my heart softening despite everything. Aisha, belonging doesn't come from owning walls. It comes from the way you treat the people inside them. She wiped her eyes. I see that now, she whispered. I went too far. I'm sorry. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't sharp anymore. It was tender, fragile. Finally, I reached for her hand. Let's start again, I said softly. Not as enemies, but as women who both love the same man. She looked at me, truly looked, and nodded. There were no grand apologies, no hugs or tears. Just a quiet truce, fragile but real. But life has a way of testing peace, and mine was about to be tested again. Not by words this time, but by the eyes of the world. For a few days, the house was silent again, but this time, it was a different kind of silence. Not the heavy kind that chokes your breath, but the kind that lingers after a storm, when everyone's just waiting to see what's left standing. Zayn left early for work. Aisha began helping more, making tea, watering plants, even folding my shawls. She didn't say much, but her actions required her apologies. I tried to forgive, but forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a slow, uneven road, and sometimes it takes just one whisper to pull you back into the past. The neighbors start talking. It began with a phone call. Shaina Baji, came a familiar voice, Mrs. Khan from next door. I just heard something shocking. Is it true you filed a legal case against your son? I froze. Word had spread. By evening, 3 more neighbors had called. One even sent me a voice note saying, you should have handled it privately, Baji. These things make families look bad. I sat in my courtyard, phone in hand, my tea growing cold. Was this what protecting myself looked like now, being the subject of gossip? Aisha must have felt it too. When she went to the local market, people whispered, isn't that the one who tried to take her Sas's house? She came home that evening pale and silent. Amy, she said, her voice low, people are saying terrible things about us. I looked at her carefully. Us. She swallowed hard. Yes, I mean about the family. For a moment, I wanted to tell her, you brought this on yourself. But something inside me softened again. We were all bleeding, just in different ways. The news clip. 3 nights later, Zayn came home visibly angry. He tossed his phone onto the table and said, this is too much, Amy. On the screen was a small online news clip. Karachi woman sends legal notice to her own son and daughter-in-law over property dispute. My name wasn't mentioned, but the address was close enough for everyone to know. The thumbnail showed a picture of the street outside our home. Aisha burst into tears. Everyone's laughing at us now, she cried. My parents called. They're humiliated. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I didn't leak this. Someone else did. Maybe your lawyer did. Aisha shouted. Her voice cracked, not from anger, but from exhaustion. Zayn rubbed his forehead. Amy, please. Can we just settle this quietly? Withdraw the notice or something. I stared at both of them, my son caught in the middle, his wife trembling beside him. I won't withdraw it, I said. Not because I want to hurt you, but because I need to protect what's right. The law isn't shameful, deceit is. Aisha stood up, tears still streaming down. Do you know how it feels to walk outside and have everyone whisper? I just wanted respect. Amy, not pity. Respect, I said quietly, doesn't come from pretending. It comes from truth, even if it hurts. She stormed off, slamming the door behind her. Zayn followed, calling her name. And once again, I was left in silence, my tea cold, my hands trembling. A visit from the lawyer. A week later, Nazreen came by unannounced. She walked in with her usual confidence, but her expression was softer this time. You did the right thing legally, Shaina, but emotionally, you're paying the price. I smiled faintly. I've been paying prices my whole life, Nazreen. This one just happens to have witnesses. She sighed. I can stop the rumors. Release a statement clarifying it's just a misunderstanding. I thought about it. The noise, the whispers, the endless opinions. Then I shook my head. No, let them talk. The truth doesn't need defense, only patience. Nazreen smiled sadly. You've become stronger, you know. Maybe, I said softly. Or maybe I've just stopped apologizing for existing. The unexpected gesture. That night, Aisha knocked on my door again. She looked worn, eyes swollen, voice hoarse. But in her hands, she carried a small box. I went to your old tailor, she said quietly. He remembered you. Inside the box was a folded shawl, deep maroon, with hand-stitched golden thread along the edges. Just like the one my late husband had given me on our anniversary. I wanted to say sorry, she whispered, for everything. The papers, the gossip, the shouting. I just didn't know how else to belong. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. I took the shawl gently, pressing it to my chest. Then I reached out and cupped her cheek. Belonging, I said, my voice breaking, isn't given. It's earned, with love, not signatures. She nodded, crying silently, and for the first time since that day she screamed, don't touch anything. I saw something honest in her eyes. Regret, yes, but also humility. Maybe this was the beginning of healing. The public becomes private again. Weeks passed, the gossip died down, the whispers faded, and the house slowly began to feel like a home again. We shared tea on the balcony some evenings, sometimes in silence, sometimes with light conversation about the garden or recipes. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Zayn began smiling more too, relief written all over his face. He started fixing things around the house again, humming under his breath, just like his father used to. One evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, Aisha turned to me and said softly, Emmy, I want to name the new cafe we're opening after Abu. We'll call it at Ralph's corner, my eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she wasn't claiming, she was honoring. Closing monologue, emotional ending. You know, people often say time heals everything, but they forget healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering without bleeding. That house taught me something. Walls can hold memories, but they can also hold pain. And sometimes you have to protect those walls, not out of greed, but out of love. Because love without respect becomes a wound, and respect without courage becomes silence. So I chose courage, and in that choice, I found peace. It was a Sunday morning, soft light spilling through the kitchen window, the smell of cardamom tea filling the air. Aisha was baking something sweet that day, semolina cake, her specialty now. Zain was in the courtyard, fixing an old fan. For the first time in months, the house breathed again. I thought I'd seen and felt everything this home could hold. Pain, anger, forgiveness. But life, it seems, always keeps one last secret tucked away in the corners you stop looking at. The letter in the old cupboard. I found it by accident. I was cleaning out my husband's old cupboard, the one in the guest room. It still smelled faintly of him after all these years. That mix of talcum powder and sandalwood oil. Inside, under a stack of papers tied with faded string, was a yellowed envelope. My name was written on it, in his familiar, neat handwriting. Cheyenne, it said. Nothing more. No date, no explanation. My heart trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter, fragile, the ink smudged slightly at the edges. I sat on the bed, my hands shaking, and began to read. The letter. My dear Cheyenne, if you are reading this, it means time has done what it always does, moved forward without my permission. I know you worry too much about what will happen when I am gone. About Zain, about the house, about whether they'll remember the value of what we built together. So I want to tell you the truth. This house, the deed, everything. I didn't put it in your name just for convenience. I did it because I saw what others couldn't. I saw how much you gave. Every corner of this home bears your hand, your warmth, your faith. But I also saw something else. Zain, he is good, but he is soft-hearted, easily swayed by emotion. And I feared that one day, someone might take advantage of that kindness. So I decided, if the house was in your name, he would always have a foundation to return to, no matter how the winds change. I didn't protect this home from him. I protected it for him. And when the time comes that he or his wife try to claim more than they give, remember this. You don't owe them explanations. You only owe them love, the kind that teaches, not the kind that spoils. Love them, but never let them forget whose hands built their shelter. Your husband, Ralph, the weight of his words. By the time I finished, the words blurred through my tears. I pressed the paper to my heart and wept quietly. All these years, I thought he'd left me with a house. But what he'd really left was wisdom. He had seen what I didn't. That love alone wasn't enough to protect a home. You needed boundaries, too. I sat there for a long time, the clock ticking softly in the background. Outside, I could hear Aisha laughing, a soft, genuine laugh, as Zain teased her about the cake. For a moment, I felt him there with me, Ralph, as if he were saying, see, you did well, Cheyenne. The conversation I never expected. That evening, I gathered my courage and called Aisha and Zain into the living room. I found something today, I said quietly, holding the letter. They sat down, curious. I read it aloud, every line, every word. When I finished, the room was silent. Aisha's eyes were red, her lips trembling. Zain rubbed his face with both hands, sighing deeply. I never knew Abba thought that far ahead, he whispered. Aisha reached out slowly and touched my hand. Amy, I'm sorry. I thought you were being controlling, but you were just protecting his wish. I smiled softly. No, Beta, I was protecting our family's heart. That's what this home is, not just walls, but memory. Zain nodded. We'll never forget that again. A new beginning. A month later, the cafe, Ralph's Corner, opened near the old neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, just a cozy place with wooden chairs, jasmine plants near the window, and pictures of our family on the wall. There was one framed photo near the counter, my husband, smiling proudly beside our old gate. Below it, a small plaque read, "This house taught us that love is not ownership, it's protection." Aisha ran the cafe beautifully. She even introduced a new menu item called Amy's Chai Special, a tribute, she said, to the mornings I used to make tea while the world still slept. Sometimes customers asked me, "Are you the mother-in-law from the story everyone talked about?" And I just smile. Yes, I'd say. But that story had a happy ending. We just had to learn how to write it. The lesson. Life has a way of testing you, not to break you, but to show you who you are when everything else falls apart. That letter taught me something no argument ever could. You can lose a house and still have a home, but only if you choose forgiveness over pride. Aisha and I still disagree sometimes. I'm stubborn, she's ambitious. But now, there's respect in the space between us. And every time I watch her serve customers, smile at Zain, or make tea for me without being asked, I whisper a silent thank you to Ralph, because even from beyond the years, he kept his promise to protect his home and the love inside it. Sometimes, when the evening light falls across the courtyard just right, I sit on the old wooden chair near the kitchen door, the same one where I used to shell peas while Ralph hummed his favorite ghazal in the background. The walls, the tiles, even the tiny cracks in the floor, they all carry echoes of the life we built here. You see, a home isn't defined by whose name is on the deed. It's defined by who remembers the sacrifices behind it. Aisha now moves freely in the kitchen. I still tease her sometimes. Just don't ban me again, She laughs, embarrassed, and says, "Never again, Amy. You're the queen me of this kitchen. And maybe she's right. Not the queen of walls and cupboards, but of lessons learned, wounds healed, and pride softened into peace. I think back to that day, the day she screamed, "Don't touch anything." It feels so far away now, like a storm that came and went, washing everything clean. If I've learned one thing, it's this. Every relationship has its seasons. Sometimes, love looks like letting go. And sometimes, it looks like standing your ground, gently, firmly, without hate. Because family isn't about who wins an argument. It's about who's willing to stay after the shouting fades, after the papers are signed, after the tears dry. When people ask me what forgiveness feels like, I tell them this. It feels like sitting in a kitchen you were once banned from, smelling fresh cardamom tea, hearing your daughter-in-law humming softly, and realizing you're finally at peace. So I'll ask you, my dear listener, if someone tried to erase your place in the home you built with your own hands, would you fight for it, or would you walk away in silence? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes your story might help another mother, another daughter, find her strength too. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, not just for me, but for every woman who ever kept her home standing, even when her world was falling apart. Dove, respect isn't inherited. It's earned through love, patience, and the courage to stand tall when no one else will.